Actually, I need a little bit more time, so I'm going to just sit back down and let Cindy and Vadim take it from here. Lights, please.
Whoa. Lucky this plant thing's here, really. Whoa!
Stop moving, both of you. This is Devil's Snare. You have to relax. If you don't, it'll only kill you faster.
Kill us faster? Oh, now I can relax. Hermione! Now what are we gonna do?
Just relax.
Hermione, where are you?
Do what I say. Trust me.
Harry!
You're okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
He's not relaxing, is he?
Apparently not.
We've got to do something.
What?
I remember reading something in herbology. Devil snare. It's deadly fun, but will sulk in the sun. That's it. Devil snare hates sunlight. Luma Solen.
Ron, you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Whew. Lucky we didn't panic.
Oh, Ron. How delightful. How many of you have seen that movie? Oh my gosh, so we've got some catching up to do. So let me tell you a little story here. They're looking for a treasure. That's Ron and Hermione and Harry Potter. They're looking for the Sorcerer's Stone. And they know that it's under this trap door, but it's being guarded by a three-headed, ferocious dog. Luckily, the dog's asleep. They have to move the paw off of the trap door. Unfortunately, the dog wakes up, starts to snarl, ready to bite their heads off when they dive down into the trap door, into the devil's snare. From the frying pan into the fire, from one fear to another. And of course, it's our natural instinct when we land in devil's snare to push back, to resist, to fight, to struggle. Luckily for them, Hermione knew what it was. Relax, it'll only kill you quicker if you struggle. So she relaxes, Harry relaxes. They are safe and released. Ron is another story. Ron is the one that's still screaming, panicking, not relaxing, until Hermione remembers the light. She brings out the light, dissolves the snare, and everybody leaves happily ever after. Well, for a minute or two. So I gotta say that it's actually very contradictory when we're facing struggles in our life, like devil's snare, to relax. Would you agree? Yeah, it feels counterintuitive to relax when we're facing something like that. But what if instead of it being counterintuitive, that it's just contradicting what our ego, what our subconscious has learned over time? It's actually very intuitive to listen to the idea of relaxing when we're facing something that's threatening us. But that subconscious of ours has been working overtime to teach us how to struggle in the face of difficulty. Most of the spiritual principles that we talk about here at Unity may seem counterintuitive to the ego, but we're here today to remind ourselves that it's because we are not human, and that our response to the troubles of the human being has to come from our spiritual perspective. So that's what we're here to do today. We're going to be talking for the next few weeks about the power of non-resistance. I'm guessing some of you want to leave now, which is a form of resistance, just by the way. But if we look at Harry Potter's story here, it's a great metaphysical interpretation for our own life. Give me an example of what the devil's snare might be in your life. Worry? What about? What kind of things feel like a threat to us? Meeting the boss. Illness. Time. Traffic. Money. You got it. It's those everyday things that grab at us. You know, I know what it's like to be in a traffic jam and be late for an appointment, an important appointment. I know what it's like to wake up and have laryngitis when you're supposed to sing a solo that day. You think I resisted? Just a little bit. How many times have you been depending on a family member to show up to help you with something today, and as usual, they don't show up? Do you feel a sense of resistance there? How many of you have been without work for quite some time and suddenly foreclosure notice shows up in your mailbox? These are the kind of things that cause us to want to resist. And that seems to be our nature, to do something like that in those situations. Because when you think about it, if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, anybody? Yeah, so it's the triangle, and the bottom layer is the thing that human beings must fill first before they look at the things above it. So most of us absolutely will focus on getting air if we're being deprived of it before we're going to worry about whether we're going to make that party this Friday or not. Or if we're without water, maybe it has something to do with shelter, enough food. Those are the kind of things that we focus on first. When those are deprived, we are going to resist. Fight or flight, usually. Now we've also learned that some of us freeze because we don't know what to say or what to do. Although I did come across a study that Deepak Chopra talks about that says that now when people are facing threats, whether they're really difficult or just mild, threats are being addressed by 15% of us by going to therapy. I think that's great. 85% of us, on the other hand, respond by watching TV. Going into denial. This is not happening. I am not here. Yeah. So we talk about our daily needs, our human needs, you know, the money, the health, making sure that there's people that care about us, that everything is, you know, living conditions are going the way that we want them to do. And the forms of resistance that might show up in us, some of us might respond like Ron, where we yell and kick and scream, panic. Some of us might tone it down just a little bit and use our words. We might do a little bit of arguing or insulting or denying responsibility. It's not my fault. And some of us take action when we're feeling resistant. You know, action because God told us, supposedly, God can only help those who help themselves. So let's take some action. Well, it all depends on what action you take. You know, if you're coming at this by withholding good from somebody else, punishing them, depriving them, leaving someone in the lurch, quitting, any of these types of actions may not be for your good. And the most common way that we respond to trouble is internally with our thoughts and our feelings. We may not say it out loud, but we have a way of responding to trouble internally with our thoughts and feelings. So think about resenting your coworker because they got the promotion over you. That resentment is a form of what? Resistance, yes. Maybe you're worried because you see that your child is starting to hang out with kids that could be not good for them. Worry, a form of resistance. Feeling unworthy because nobody put a Facebook like up on your post today. Unworthiness. Pessimism about nothing ever goes right for me. Why even try? That's a form of resistance. How about when you're impatient? I don't know. I have to say that most of the time I walk into a drive-through, a fast food restaurant, I feel a little impatience, form of resistance, not very helpful. Perhaps we're a little critical about our daughter-in-law on a regular basis. We don't say it out loud, but we're holding those thoughts. Maybe we resist by feeling powerless to get our boss to listen or unworthy to ask for what we need. All forms of resistance. Did you know that? Because if you pay attention to any one of those, you're going to feel a sense of anxiety or upset in the body. We're going to hear a lot from Imelda Shanklin today. She wrote a book probably 100 years ago called What Are You? From her perspective 100 years ago, she said mental resistance excites your nerves, makes them tense, burns them out. You become irritable, apprehensive. It saps the fluids of your body. It makes your flesh sensitive. Your life takes on two interests: defense of what you call your rights and defense of your body. Now, we've converted that mental resistance idea. What the word that's more familiar to us is stress. Same thing. Today we would say that when we experience stress, it is a form of resistance, and our body can experience headaches, stomach upset, rapid heartbeat, hard to breathe, not able to sleep, feelings of aches and pains in the body. Maybe you have colds more often. All of these, nervousness, shaking, all of these are an example of how stress affects us. Stress, also known as resistance. So, unfortunately for some of you, I am not here to hand out the sedatives today. But since you're here at Unity, the way that we handle these things is look at it from a spiritual perspective. Our first wake-up call when we feel stress, which means we're resisting something, is to remind ourselves, I am spirit. Just say that out loud. I am spirit. I'm here having a temporary human experience, but I am not the human being. I'm just experiencing what the human being is experiencing. I don't think like the human. I'm not affected in spirit like my human being is. But if the majority of your life feels like you're pushing a rock uphill, if you feel more depressed than content about life on the most part, if you spend more time in worry and doubt and irritation and want to escape life, these are all signs that you've forgotten who you are, that you're living from your humanity instead of your spirituality. We've been busy writing our novel, but it's actually a fictional novel. I'm not saying that what is happening in your life isn't really happening, but I want you to understand that what is happening is not the deciding factor about who you are and how you can be in this given moment. I'm going to invite you to just think about writing an autobiography. You understand what an autobiography is? I'm writing about my true self. I don't know how many autobiographies really write that. They might fudge a few things, but we'd like to think that if we really sat down to write our autobiography, we would start with the idea, I am spirit, and this is who I am as spirit, which means there shouldn't be a storyline of suffering in your autobiography. The human story, the fictional story that we write, is often filled with suffering, but it only means that there's suffering in it. It has nothing to do with the people that seem to be causing your problems or the circumstances that you're facing. Now, the pain, might have come from those catalysts, but for the most part, our human story is about suffering. We're focused on the things that seem to be making our life miserable, but it doesn't have to do with the facts. The suffering is actually coming from the meaning that you are giving to the facts. Take a breath. What if all of our fears and resistance in life is based on how we are perceiving ourselves? Think about that for a minute. If we're upset about something in life, it's not the thing out there, but how we are perceiving ourselves. So let me give you a few examples. How many of you resist change? Everybody should be putting your hand up right now. Most of us resist change. We can suffer over it for, weeks and years and months before it happens, knowing that it's coming. But it has nothing to do with the fact that change will kill us. Anybody here been killed by change? No. But we do suffer when we face change if we believe that we are not able to go through it successfully. If we believe we're going to be a failure at this, we don't know how to get through it, that's when the suffering comes on. And that has to do with how we see ourselves. Some of us have been through a divorce, maybe even years ago, and we're still talking about it and we're still suffering from it. Not because we can't get through it on our own. We've proved that we're already living on our own and we're not dead yet. But it's because we believe that we must not be lovable or worthy to be loved and may never find love again. It's a perception about ourselves. Some of us are facing aging. Well, face it, you're all facing aging, just so you know. Let me just tell you right now, everybody's aging. Some of us feel like we're getting towards the end of the spectrum and resisting it, usually because we are watching television and we're seeing all the drug ads that tell you if you have this, that, and the other, and they always show old people. So it's not about the fact that we're not going to live a happy life as we're aging. It's because we believe that we will be limited, that we won't have someone to help us, that we won't get through this without a whole lot of pain. That's a perception about ourselves. Are you starting to see this, where our resistance is self-inflicted? Some of us resist asking for what we want, not because that person is not going to give me what I need, because we haven't even asked yet, but it's because we believe that we're not worthy of speaking up and having our needs met. Our thoughts, our needs aren't as important as other people's, and so it creates that sense of resistance. So just start tapping in here into your heart and seeing where you might be resisting. Is it really because of out there, or is it about how we are perceiving out there? We're going to talk some more. Our life up to this point could very easily have been based on, the decisions that we're making could have been based on these fictional stories that we've been telling about our life all along. And if that's our case, I'm here to remind you that that divine law that's always working, that's meant to provide for our good, is working against us. Not because the law says, I'm going to teach you a lesson, but simply because it's who we are being. And the law can only do one thing: respond in like kind. Those thoughts and feelings that we're holding in our mind, respond in like kind, because that's the way that the universe responds. So if we're telling the story to ourselves and to others that the world is out to get us for whatever reason, this is an opportunity for us to begin radiating at that energy. So think about it. Do you know what it feels like to be a failure? Anybody know what it feels like to be a failure? Okay, when you are in that emotion of failure and helplessness and victimhood, you are sending out a signal specific to failure. And the universe can only respond with circumstances that support you being a failure. So let me just share, here's some ways that we resist what we're sending out, what we're writing in our story. When we feel powerless, unworthy, unlovable, just notice if any of these hit home: stupid, undeserving, insecure, weak, poor. Any of those forms of resistance are activating the law to say, okay, let me show you a mirror. Yes, you evidently will have what it is that you are holding in your consciousness. That's why Jesus tried to warn us from Matthew 16. He says, I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. So we're talking about our stories based in fear, remembering that any fear we hold about anything is actually a form of belief. And as Jesus said up here on the screen, let it be done to you as you believe. That's the divine law. And most of these human stories that we're telling are based in error beliefs. So many of us are still looking out at the world as two worlds, two powers, good and evil, or two beings, God and the devil, both of them out there, nothing I can do to stop them, they're in charge, I'm helpless. That's what we call duality. I want to share a story with you from Linda Martello Whitsitt, who wrote the book, How to Pray Without Talking to God. So that in itself probably takes you off on a tangent, but come back. Okay, let me share this. Her husband had been laid off during the tech bombs, all those ones that were going under and lots of layoffs happening. And they knew they couldn't afford their house with him unemployed, so they immediately had to get rid of their house and buy something smaller. And not long after that, she was fired from her job as a minister in training because they were asking her to do something that she felt was unethical. And besides that, their son was now being deployed in the first-in troops to Iraq. All happening pretty much at the same time in their life. She was resisting, as you can imagine. She was feeling helpless. She was feeling a victim. And here's what she says. At the convergence of these events, I was given the gift of a spiritual counseling session from a highly regarded professional, eager for some support. I walked in, sat down, and started spewing all my woes, crying, worrying, wanting someone to say, poor baby. Instead, I was slapped across the face, spiritually speaking, when the counselor remarked, so you don't really believe there's only one presence and one power. You don't really believe that you are divine and therefore able to walk through the uncertainties of this time in confidence. You don't really believe that you and your son are divine love, inseparable, whether he's in Iraq or off the planet. Instead of running away, form of resistance, instead of running away as I felt inclined to do, I remained rooted to my seat. Instead of receiving the counselor's words as an attack, resistance, I swiftly shifted into alignment with the truth he was illuminating. I sat up, I wiped the tears away from my cheeks and whispered, "Thank you." I left that session prepared to seek my next rightful place of service and to practice oneness in meditation twice a day in front of a photograph of my son. I promise if you come to spiritual counseling, I won't do that to you. I think he probably took license because he knew she was a minister. And she would kind of get what he was saying. But the point of this is, either we live the truth that we know, which is our fifth principle, or we go home and watch TV. The fact that you're sitting here today makes me think that you are open and receptive to finding ways to express from your spirit instead of your ego. Trusting the true principles that we talk about here every week. It's time to write our autobiography from our spiritual self. And even though it may not have happened yet, we could start writing stories about how we want things to express and start living into it and making it real for us. Last I read in the scriptures, we are made in God's image. God is spirit, I am spirit. God is spirit, I am spirit. Say it with me. God is spirit, I am spirit. And that means I'm eternal and I am unharmable. Now I know you're coming up with all of these contradictions right now about, my body is riddled with a sickness, or I have $0 in my bank account, or they really did die. But still, what is spirit? It is eternal, it is unharmable. If we could start to let that sink in and become our autobiography, I am eternal and unharmable. That's one of the steps we take to non-resistance. One of the things we remind ourselves is that God is my essence. What I'm made of is what God is made of. Imelda Shanklin said, one of my favorites, non-resistance is the essence of God. How about that? If we want to know what the essence of God is, think non-resistance. Why? Because there's only one presence. There's nothing else out here to resist for God. How about this from Isaiah 45, the prophet saying for God, "So all the world from east to west will know there's no one besides me. I am the Lord and there is no other." There's only God. Say that with me. There's only God. A Course in Miracles says it this way: nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. What's real? Spirit is real. Unreal, when they say unreal, we're talking about the temporary. We're talking about the relative. We're talking about things that depend on other things for their existence. They are not of power. They're simply expressing in the moment as we give them power, as we see them to be true. So it's up to us. How does God see the situation versus how do I see the situation? Trust in this moment that there's nothing to fear and there's nothing to push against. There's only God. Say that with me. There's only God. Is God taking offense when we forget to pray, when we forget to say thank you, God? Not at all. God can't take offense. That's a human reaction based on a human belief. We get our feelings hurt as human beings because we believe that they have power to hold our good from us. Does God respond that way? No. God is only present in its fullness. So this one power, this infinite expression that's always here, is not out there, it's in here. And when we're writing our autobiography, this is a chance for us to consider all the powers of God in us. We talk about 12 in particular, and we're going to talk about 3 today that help us overcome our resistance. And one of those is from the power of elimination. If there was anything ever to let go of, it would be resistance. We have the power to say no to that which does not serve us, to let go, to release anything within those human stories that make us feel like we're less than. When we start to hear ourselves complaining or feeling like a victim or helpless, that is our opportunity to say, I let this go, and I let God express in the middle of this. Release ourselves from the perception, I'm only human. Release ourselves. Actually, we really have bought into the idea that it's the material world that will help us. Release yourself from that attachment. It is not your help. Your help comes from spirit. And you can also release your fear that the material has the power to hold back your good, because that is not your source. Your source is always giving of itself and always giving good. So as we're writing this autobiography, I'm asking you to start living into this power. Letting go. We also want to live into the power of faith. Faith, one of our most important powers, is how we see things. When it says in the book of Hebrews how everything that's visible came from that which is invisible, it's our faith that allows us to perceive the invisible spirit, the substance of God. So we want to work with that power of faith. No matter what our physical eyes see is going on, we come back inward to that heart, that power of faith, and know there's only God here. God is good. God is for me. There's nothing working against me. That's what our faith helps us see. And our power of imagination is ready to be used at any moment. Unfortunately, we're using it regularly to picture our worries. And again, the law responds and says, okay, here you go. Instead, use your power of imagination to see what your autobiography wants to live. Imagine your desire already complete and you're already living in it. Now you're starting to radiate completeness and wholeness and fullness and good. And the universe is responding in like kind. Every time we're resisting what's happening out here, we're basically crumpling up our autobiography and putting it into the fire. Can't actually be done, but we start giving our power out to the material again. So we're asking ourselves to move into a state of non-resistance. And here's one of my other most favorite sayings from Imelda Shanklin on the screen. Non-resistance commands omnipotence. Now, if you let that sink in, your head should explode. Non-resistance commands omnipotence. Can you see how that might work? When we think of omnipotence, we think of the one power, the power that's working for good. But in order for it to work for good, we actually can hold it back by resisting, or we can let go, let God, move into a sense of allowing, accepting, gratitude. When we're in that non-resistant consciousness, now omnipotence is free to work all of its infinite power for our good. You decide resistance, non-resistance, Failure, blockage, inhibition, unlimited freedom. Which will it be? It's up to us. There's a point where Imelda Shanklin received a letter from someone who had basically lived a life of poverty, couldn't seem to get past it, followed them everywhere, and they were writing to Imelda, trying to figure out a way out. And that's a good example. When our entire life continues to be something limiting to us, it just means that we're radiating at that frequency, and we have to change channels. We have to change beliefs about ourselves and about the nature of God within us so that our channel rises to a higher frequency, and now we're one with God. Now the goodness can work for us. So they're radiating the frequency of lack. They've been living in that consciousness for so long. It's a story that they are having trouble getting free from. Here's what Imelda said. So long as you treat poverty as an unavoidable experience, poverty will thrust its gaunt form before your eyes and will snivel in rags by your side. If you ask how you can become non-resistant to supply, in other words, welcoming supply, the answer is supply is a part of the universe. Why is that true? Why is supply a part of the universe? God is source. God is supply. God is substance. It's everywhere present. This universe is made of divine substance. So that supply is part of the universe. You are part of the universe. Why are you part of the universe? We've been saying it already here. I am spirit. And what is this universe? God expressing as spirit. So at the very foundation, I am one with this universe of spirit because I am spirit. She says the unity that prevails in the universe, there's only one presence, makes you and supply to be one. Yay! Can you see that? Did that make sense to you? That is amazing, but true. That is what we want to write in our autobiography. As a matter of fact, let's change this statement and put the word me in here. Let's go to this. All right, let's say that together. The unity that prevails in the universe makes me and supply to be one. Okay, now if we're facing illness, let's replace supply with life. Let's say this next one. The unity that prevails in the universe makes me and life to be one. And if we're in the face of confusion, can't make a good decision, let's replace it with intelligence. Together? The unity that prevails in the universe makes me and intelligence to be one. And if we are in the face of attack, we're feeling like a victim, or we're lonely, let's say this together with love. The unity that prevails in the universe makes me and love to be one. That means I am love. I am supply. I am intelligence. Do you see this? This is non-resistance when we can take on these attitudes. Whatever it is we think we need, we already are. Because God and I are one, there's only one spirit here, and I'm going to express whatever quality of God is needed in this moment. That's how we do affirmative prayer. We affirm those truths about God. That is writing your autobiography, the truth of who you are. So know that who you are is really the one presence, the Christ. It's God expressing uniquely as each one of us. That's who you are. That's who you write your autobiography about. We find all kinds of scripture that reminds us of this truth. Up here on the screen, that before we call, God's already answered. If we have a need, God knows our need before we even ask. If we think that God doesn't have time for us, we remember it's God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. We say it here every week. Let's say it again. There's only one presence and one power in the universe and in our lives, the all-loving goodness of God. Listen to Hermione. Trust me. Just relax. Do you know why now? Do you know why she said that? Do you see how that's a spiritual principle? Trust the Christ within. Just relax. Take the walls down. Stop pushing against, proving to the universe that there is a barrier between you and your good. Trust me. Just relax. A Course in Miracles says, in my defenselessness lies my security. When somebody wants to accuse you of something that you know you didn't do, in your defenselessness. In other words, don't get all hot and bothered about it, screaming and shouting and pushing and resisting, but knowing the truth of who you are. They may not be your source of good in that moment, but Spirit is your ultimate and infinite source. It will supply for you in other ways. So our work here is to turn away from that which our ego wants to resist, knowing, as Jesus said, I and the Father are one. There's no separation. There's only God here. This is the truth of our story. And I'm asking you to write it in your consciousness day in and day out, moment by moment. There is nothing to resist here. There is only God. And as I give way to that, Spirit is free now. Omnipotence is free to provide for my good in the best way that it knows how. And how many of you know that Spirit knows how a whole lot better than our ego does? Yes? Yes. So we should be rushing to want to turn this over to our higher self. To take down the walls, let your arms down, relax, trust me, says God, and give way to that which is for our good, instead of that which we believe is trying to take our good from us. Let me finish with this quote from Ernest Holmes. If we would have the same faith in spiritual laws that we have in physical ones, our faith would be complete and miracles would happen every day because divine law is acting upon our beliefs. So as much faith as you want to put into your paycheck or your diagnosis or the ability to be a fashion model so everyone will love you, as much as you want to put your faith into these outer rewards as your source of good, they will fail regularly for us. Turn within, trust this divine source within, and relax. As soon as you feel yourself going, there's a little bit of hope in me, you're there. If you can just get to hope, you're there. You're on your way to a completion. So let's figure out how to get to hope in meditation, okay? Let's do this as an opportunity for us to practice writing our autobiography. And I'll just invite you to, first thing, turn away from the outer. This conversation, this monologue that we just had might be bringing up something for you that you're thinking, oh no, this doesn't fit in the category. This should definitely be resisted. Just notice if that's you and what that thing is about. Ask yourself, what kind of meaning am I giving this situation? When you're facing a struggle in your life, what kind of meaning are you adding to this situation? It might be that this struggle is against me because I'm not worthy, because I'm not enough, because I don't have enough. That may be true in the material, perhaps in your bank account. But when you're talking about yourself and your source, you are eternal, you are infinite, you are unharmable. I am spirit. My essence is of God. I am an expression of the one presence, and nothing is against me, for there is only one presence. I stop writing my suffering fictional novel, and I start believing the truth. The presence of divine substance and supply is everywhere. It never runs out. I will not talk, I will not give power to the idea of lack or limitation. For there is only divine supply. With my power of faith, I see that divine substance filling the atmosphere that I'm breathing. I will never run out of substance. Before I ask, the answer has been provided. I will not talk or put my faith in this diagnosis. I am spirit. The essence of divine life is the nature of my being. I am a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness. For in God there is only life. I will not talk about or give power to my worries, for these are not my worries. They may belong to the ego, but that is not who I am. I use the power of my imagination to see my heart's desire finished, complete, already written in my autobiography. My mind is one with God mind. The answers I seek are already within me. I will not allow a belief in unworthiness or loneliness to overcome me. For I am the very essence of divine love. I am never separate from God. There is only good in me. And as I live from this goodness, I now choose to see only goodness in the world around me, to accept all beings as they are, without judgment, without resistance, simply allowing each being to live from its own self while seeing their good. I am love. In this one presence that fills heaven and earth, I can relax and trust. There's only good here, for there's only God here. This is the truth of my being. And so now I live it. I am it. I let it be. So it is. Amen.